Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm delighted to welcome you to the Essex Startups Digital Marketing Strategies Workshop, where today we're going to be looking at SEO or search engine optimization, and we're also going to be looking at email marketing. So I'm delighted to be joined by James Morgan here from Acquisition Agency, and I'll hand over to James in a little while for an introduction. This is a 2-hour session. As I said, we're going to talk about SEO for approximately an hour, give or take. We'll have a short break in between, and then we'll come back and we will go into email marketing. So I wanted just to very quickly start by saying hello. And for those of you who haven't been to one of our events before, I just wanted to introduce the team very quickly. So the Essex Startups team is 6 of us in there. There's myself, Alexa, Lauren, and Christian, and we work directly for the university. And we're supported and joined by James and Magda, who are our entrepreneurs in residence. So across the team, we've all got various experiences of starting our own businesses, helping friends or family or partners start businesses. We've been working at the university kind of for a number of years now. We're growing what we do. And today's event really is designed to give you a slightly different insight. So we recognize businesses are multidimensional. So we want to start broadening some of the topics that we speak about. And I think today's one on SEO is going to be a great example of that as well. So please do get involved throughout the course of the afternoon. If you've got questions, do send them through either in the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself. If you're not sure, you can always send them to myself or Alexa directly, and we can ask those of James, or I'll answer them when I cover email marketing after this. So really, I just wanted to say, this is the plan for the day. This is probably the shortest slide we've ever had when it comes to an agenda, because normally we've got action-packed afternoons for you all. So please do, if you can, if you're in a position to, do turn your cameras on. Let us see that there's people at the other end. I appreciate with internet connections, it's not always easy. Put questions up, even if it's just, I thought it was this way, or I'd heard this, it can help dispel some myths. This is an example of giving you an opportunity to learn something hopefully new, give you a few skills to take away, apply within your business, and take forward. So on that note, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask James if he's able to start sharing his presentation. And as I mentioned, we're joined by James, and also we've got his business partner Harry in the room as well. And they run the Acquisition Agency, which is a SEO agency or digital marketing agency based in Essex. They have a desk in the Innovation Centre, which is on the Colchester campus. And on that note, I'm going to say that's everything from myself. I'm going to hand over to James, and we'll get underway.
Right, well, nice to meet everyone. I'm James, as mentioned. I'm the co-founder of Acquisition Agency, based with Harry's in the call as well. We're a small digital marketing agency that provides search engine optimization, pay-per-click, and website design and development to companies all over the world. We started off in the UK sector, however, we moved over to sort of international educational clients. We work with a wide range of clients all over the world and very varied industries. This is the first time I've ever done a course like this, so please excuse me if I'm nervous. I'm very honest. It's the first time I've ever done this, but I'm hoping to give an insight into what Harry and I spend our time doing and why it's beneficial for entrepreneurs and business owners to really get a handle on their organic and on-page SEO. So I think with regards to questions, if anyone has anything, please shout them out or put them in the chat politely. If you're going to shout at me, please be polite. And then I'll do my best to answer any that come across. I know SEO is such a vast and varied topic that there's so many questions that could come up. So first of all, what is SEO? The definition of search engine optimization is literally making sure your website is able to be read by Google. When you're building a website and it's indexed online, your websites never actually pop up on Google at all. And a lot of people wonder why or how that could be done. Why when I Google my company name, acquisition agency or whatever, why is it not appearing on the first page of Google? Because it's my name. These are a lot of questions we get asked, and it's all down to search engine optimization. It's a lifelong process of increasing your online presence just by managing how your website works, managing how the content is, managing how your link structure is, all these sort of on-page technical offerings that we're able to do. It's going to be discussed further on in the slides. A lot of people ask me why SEO is so like a continued effort. Google are consistently and always providing Google algorithm updates to make sure that makes the system better, improve the quality, which in hindsight makes it a lot more difficult for SEO specialists like myself. So I think one of the best ways for us to describe what SEO is and search engines are really getting down to the core understanding of the core meaning of them. They're essentially answer machines. They return results that are useful and relevant. Then it ranks based on popularity, relevance, and a huge other wide range of metrics that we'll discuss going on in this. There's obviously different search engines like Yahoo, Bing, Google, Baidu, hundreds of search engines. But Google has the market share, which is some interesting graphics I'll be able to show you in a moment about sort of this market share between Google and how much different it is compared to Bing and Yahoo. The popularity on a website truly does get ranked along with relevance and usefulness of the website. There's hundreds of metrics, as mentioned, I'll show you. If we go in further, you'll see the market share now. So 94% of all searches happen on a Google property, whether that's Google's own platforms with .co.uk, .com, .anything, as well as Google Images, Google Maps. 94% of all searches happen. It's absolutely gigantic. Everyone's heard of Google. That's why it's really important for your personal website or your company website to be optimized for Google. Look at the things like DuckDuckGo, Yahoo at 1.141%. Even YouTube at 3%. It's still a Google property. They're everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So when you build a website and when it starts to be in sort of being placed online, you've hit publish, everything's good. There are systems called crawlers, which are essentially bots. People call them spiders. I like the name spiders. It's very accurate as well, because they literally scour the internet. They scour all over your website. They go on every page, every section. They look at every word on the website, and they decipher that information into a query string and send it straight back to Google, the search engine. There are thousands of crawlers and spider bots. There's Google bot, there's Yahoo bot, there's Bing bot, just to go on. There's thousands. I mean, even SEO tools we'll discuss going on as well. Every single thing that can view a website that's automated, not an actual person, has a bot. They're often given a bad rap because of how it sounds. I've got bots and spiders on the website, but I assure you, you won't be ranking if your website's not got any spiders. So please do not be scared of them. There are ways to see sort of what bots and that are viewing your website all the time that your host provider may be able to show you as well. So another thing going off the spiders and crawlers is what they do is they provide the information to Google along with other metrics to base the results on the search engine result page based on relevance and popularity. So as mentioned on slide 4, search engines assign popularity and relevance ranking to your website, which then helps to provide the correct information when I actually Google things like SEO and Colchester SEO. The relevance and how relevant the result is, the key phrase is an example I wrote down here just to be a bit more to give the right sort of answer, because there are different types of keywords you can type in, which is broad, and then you've got more sort of long tail keywords, which we'll discuss again in the future. And I just wanted to put in that if the user types, why is my tomato plant turning yellow, as an example, you'll have an article or a whole website based on that one subject. And if someone Googles that, my tomato plant is turning yellow, Google's able to assign a relevance and a popularity rating to that one article, and chances are you'll find it. Which is why it's really important that your website is optimized to finding the right keywords. Because, for instance, if you're just going to put tomato plant on Google, it's unlikely why is my tomato plant turning yellow is going to pop up. You're going to get more information on queries rather than sort of an intent article. And I keep talking a lot about how Google views your website and how these spiders view your website. You know, Google's not a person. It does not view the website like we do at all. They view everything in code only. They can only see the raw variables, which is why it's really important that you don't clutter your website with images or anything that Google can't really read themselves. You know, correct keywords and meta titles, which again we'll go forward in a moment. URL structure, you know, slash why are my tomato plants turning yellow, making sure we remove stop words and things like that to the these URL structures make it incredibly easy for when I'm trying to tell someone, you know, hey, my website's acquisitionagency.co.uk, my article is slash why are my tomato plants turning yellow, with every space being a hyphen. You know, it becomes a lot easier to share URL. And if it's easier to share with your friends or anyone, it's easier to share for Google. And the next thing is Google views things as a heading hierarchy of priority. So H1 is a header one, H2 and H3 are headers. It's really important that when you have these headers, they're defined in the right way. So you often have like your most important thing. You see on the picture I've got here, local culture to SEO continues to change, uplifted businesses. So that is a header. And that's to hold Google that, hey, this header contains keywords that I really, really want to rank for. So Colchester SEO, which we rank page 1 for, that's a really important keyword. We really want to rank for that. And then we know that that's a H1, and any other text that's not that H1 is to be listened to, but it's not really the most important thing. So 5 to 10 years ago, we used to be able to chuck every keyword ever under the sun on our website and Google would make it rank. It's not quite like that anymore. There's something called keyword density now, which is really important. So based on a 1,000 word article, it's important to stick to 1 to 2% of your keyword being placed within the content itself. It's just a metric that people have found, tried and tested over the time. I know that Yoast endorsed that, SEMrush endorsed that, Ahrefs endorsed that. These companies, there's a bit more information about them as we go into the slides. But this keyword density is so important. If you see all this content I've got here, on here, we see local Colchester SEO, you know my keywords Colchester SEO, and we know that SEO and Colchester's other keywords mentioned. In all of that text right there, 2 keywords are mentioned, but it's not the same keyword. You see Colchester SEO is mentioned once, and SEO and Colchester is mentioned once. That's about what we want if you can expand that a little bit higher. You know, keep that keyword density really, really low, because otherwise it's classed as keyword stuffing, which, although you'd think it would be good, Google actually penalizes websites and will not actually make those rank higher than anything else. And if you see here in SEO and Colchester as well, being an article you'd find, you can see here that I've actually linked SEO and Colchester to a service page on our website, which is why it's really important, because it tells Google the natural flow of the website. You know, client finds an article, the article is really interesting, and then they want to know more about SEO. You know, how is Colchester SEO changing right now in the current pandemic? You know, and then we put an AH URL link to an article where they can find out, hey, we can do SEO in pandemic. Let's find out more about it. It's really important because Google likes you to link to other bits of content. You know, there's not even a problem with linking to Wikipedia, you know, BBC, big articles. You know, Google really does like sharing the authority and sharing the flow. This is quite a big slide, a fair bit of information I spoke about. Has anyone got any questions so far at all? Okay, that means I've explained everything well enough, right? So far, that's good. That's good. So the heading hierarchy, which I've explained as well, this is more of a visual example as well. So I put that the H1 is how SEO in Colchester is changing due to COVID-19. You know, it had to be said, Google likes relevant articles right now. So the H1, this is the header, this is a paragraph section, and then underneath we had the title before on the previous slide, which shows this would be our H2, sorry, and this is my H1. So again, top to bottom, I completely forgot I put this picture in. So again, it's all about telling Google what's the most important bit of content, what needs to be picked up, what needs to be associated, and what should we show to the user when they Google things. Okay, so again, after most important title, we go straight on to H2, which I've realised I've sort of gone over in previous slides already. I'm terribly sorry for that. One thing I haven't mentioned though is it's really important to have your heading hierarchy on every page. You know, the H1, H2, H3 setup, all the way down to like H6 if you want to have fun. It's really important that every single page has a really defined, clear content structure. It's important that every single page has a main title, and then the rest of the headers tell the user and Google what they want to do. So I've spoke a lot about metrics as well, over here, and I've mentioned some of these things like authority, relevance, and some of these companies you'll start noticing, like Ahrefs, SEMrush, Majestic, even Amazon. Amazon, you'll be surprised to see on here as well, because Amazon owns Alexa, which is a ranking structure for websites. These are other companies that aren't Google, obviously, but what they do is they have their own metric that they're assigned to the internet in order to help rank a website's authority on the internet. Now, it's been pretty much proven that Google does listen to this, but it also takes all of these metrics with an absolute pinch of salt. It doesn't listen absolutely, because there are ways to inflate all of these metrics. What it does is it gets a baseline from these metrics and go, okay, why not? Why would Google not want to work with Ahrefs or SEMrush when they are one of the largest crawling websites on the internet? There's just so much data there. Ahrefs crawl billions of URLs daily, so Google has a hand in working with them. So some of these metrics that these websites do, they offer URL ratings, domain authority, page authority, Alexa rank, trust flow, citation flow, spam score. There's so many different metrics. But what we're going to show you shortly is some of these metrics in action using Ahrefs, which is a tool we use. What I wanted to speak to you about first was transactional, informational, and navigational queries. So going off of what we spoke about with the keywords before we spoke about metrics, I mentioned about why my tomato plant's turning yellow. When I put that in, that's an informational query rather than sort of a navigational query. I'm looking for information. It's really important when you try to build a website or when you're trying to rank a website that you understand your audience. People will often be like, okay, tomato plants online. That's a technically an informational query, but also it's transactional, but also it could be navigation if there's a website about it. It's really important that you get your keywords right on your website, so why are my tomato plants turning yellow is really important. I want to get straight to an article, so Google's assign that. I think so many people don't understand their audience when they look for certain keywords to make a website rank for, which is why what people tend to do is just bolster their traffic, which it's a very good SEO strategy to help increase traffic at an early stage. Once you've bolstered your traffic with random keywords, you begin to refine them, which is this understanding your audience stage. Constantly refining, plumber in Colchester, or plumber in Colchester is a fantastic transactional query. We want to make sure that we're not just put plumbing or Colchester plumbing, because that might be a bit more informational based rather than transactional based. It's a
I think that might just have been a bit of feedback, James. So feel free to keep going for now. Thank you.
Sure. Lost my word now. No. So it's important that we keep the transactional queries because plumbing in Colchester or Colchester plumbers could be a bit more transactional based rather than Colchester plumbing, for instance. It's not a very good example, but what if they're looking for being taught plumbing? It's very important that plumbing wasn't the best example I could have gave. Oh no. But you see, it's very important to make sure you define your keywords to understand the audience as much as possible. So as mentioned before, 94% of search engine market share goes towards Google. You should always make sure the website is designed. It's so important now more than ever that if your website is not defined, if you don't understand your audience and your website is not optimized for Google, there's no doubt about it, you will miss out on a huge amount of traffic. Google does try and assign websites on their own, like over a period of time. If you're really, really old website, you've got hundreds and hundreds of articles on, you will begin to rank, but you won't begin to rank if you've not really spent loads of time on it, unless you've somehow managed to do all the SEO like top notch without understanding you've really done it. So yeah, basically what I just said. So you can do everything on your own. You could build this website, have it up and running for 5 years. You can put hundreds and hundreds of articles on the website. But the search engines have limits. Your website needs to be optimized in order for Google to truly find it and then rank it higher. So the benefits of organic and on-page SEO is it's cost effective. It doesn't cost so much to actually do the on-page SEO, which is changing the way your H1s, what we discussed before. It's about building trust and authority, which is what pay-per-click and other advertising methods do not bring. Pay-per-click does not bring any trust or authority. It does bring relevant and high intent traffic, whereas pay-per-click focuses on that as well. But more importantly, SEO brings long-term results and it's sustainable over time. I would much rather spend money on getting up there to page 1 on Google organically than spending loads of money and paying for, say I owned a shop selling clothing, paying for a portion of my profits on every single click. For me, it's very cost effective. It provides trust and authority. I truly believe organic SEO is a wonderful thing, and I think everyone's trying to optimize their websites for it. So as mentioned before in the relevance and popularity, Google's main job is to refine a search engine as best they can, and then obviously assign a priority and ranking method. The more popular a site, the more valuable information it must be. Now, there are different types of websites that use different types of ranking methods. So Google focuses a lot on popularity and backlinks, as well as a little dibble of relevance. But Bing is another good search engine, which not everyone uses, but it does focus heavily on just authority and relevance rather than popularity. It can often be very hard to rank on Bing as compared to Google, purely because of the way it works. I'm sure there is a lot of people out there will disagree with me on that, but Bing can be very difficult to rank on if you're used to trying to rank for a popular search engine like Google. So this is the most important thing. This is the Google Webmaster Guidelines. Now, I've spoke about so many different ways that you can help make Google understand your website, but what we've not mentioned yet is the guidelines of what they are. Google wants you to make pages primarily for users, not search engines. Google says at the end of the day, if you do your job and you build a nice website and you write hundreds and hundreds of articles, they will find your site. But it's a lot easier with SEO. It's very important that you get that clear hierarchy, you get the text links, you build the right content, and that you create a useful, information-rich site. Make sure your titles are defined, your keywords, and Google will love your website. These guidelines are out there to help people, and one I've not put on there, which I should have, is speed. Sometimes when people build a website now, and because the amount of images they put on there, it's so slow. And there are a wide variety of plugins out there that just optimize the website. We need to be working more on websites for user experience rather than search engines, although that's what Google says. So keyword research, which we've spoken about a lot, now it's a bit more to actually go into that and provide some more information about it. So I think because I put this for absolute beginners, sort of what is a keyword and things like that, I've rehashed myself a few times. The keywords, the key phrase like "why am I tomato plant turning yellow" is something I've used a lot because it's a really good example. It's really important that if I was on the website that is mentioned in my H1s and my content within the 1 to 2%, as mentioned before. As the search engines crawl and they index, they keep a track of all the pages and keyword-based indexes, which again they return when you Google something. The more specific your keyword, like "why are my tomato plants turning yellow?" I'm sure you're going to get sick of that by the end of this. The lower competition, there's not going to be a really high competition for that, and a better chance of you actually achieving a much higher conversion rate. Whereas keywords like tomato plant, which is going to have thousands and thousands and thousands of views, but there's going to be a lot of competition for this. In my personal opinion, when I build websites and I rank websites, I aim to optimize my websites for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of long tail, low volume keywords. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather rank for 100 low volume keywords with really high conversion rate than one really, really big word like marketing. Because at the end of the day, broad searches can be educational searches. And you can't bank on consistently getting the market share of a really high broad search. Whereas a much more detailed long tail keyword is going to be fantastic. Does anyone have any questions about that at all? So that's very subjective on that one. Okay. So the point of keywords is not to rank highly in all keywords, but to rank highly for the keywords you want to rank for, like what I mentioned. I keep going over the next slide in my head, sorry. The point, and to be argued, when you become a webmaster and you create your own website, a lot of people have different strategies to how they do it. You know, they try and optimize a website straight for tomato plant, rather than what we've discussed about a more long tail keyword. What we try and do, like I just mentioned myself, is I will try and rank for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of keywords that are really low difficulty, but long tail, like high conversion rate keywords. And that's how I bolster traffic to a website. Again, it all depends on how you want to rank your website. You know, some people do like to go for that whole tomato plant. I personally don't. So when you're trying to pick a right keyword, it's really important you ask yourself the main three questions. Is it relevant? You know, will it be found? And are they happy if they land on the page? Because at the end of this, a lot of it has to be about what the user's going to find at the end. You know, is it relevant? Are they going to be happy with the article they find at the end of the road? Will they stay on? Because at the end of the day, bounce rate, which is when a user goes on your website and goes on your website and leaves, bounce rate is factored into metrics as well. So it's really important that when a user goes to something, they find what they're looking for. Otherwise, it could negatively impact your SEO. Okay, so where do I put this magic word? So there's other things in here called meta tags, like meta titles, meta descriptions, which I've included some information on, which you'll find shortly. So in your keywords, you need to put one in title tags, you know, as mentioned, H1s. So Google obviously views your website from top to bottom based on headings, a body tag, and footer tags. It's really important that your keywords are up higher on the page. So you have a keyword in the title, you have your keyword in the keyword designated boxes, then you have your keyword in the descriptions, and then obviously in your main page, because the meta title description is not visible by a user, but the actual content on the page is. So it's really important that both are filled out. And then it's really important that you stick to the keyword density. Again, I keep putting this in here because it's really important. Some people will keep putting their keyword in there and then they wonder why they never rank. It's really important. So based on the short tail, long tail keywords, again, see, I even managed to include this one on here as well. I'm really sorry about this. So you can see the tomato plant, which is very, very broad. And you can see that when to plant tomatoes is much, much lower monthly searches. But you can see it's a bit lower on the conversion rate. And then when you go all the way down here, it's why are my tomato plants turning yellow? Look at that, extremely low monthly searches, but the conversion rate is so high compared to the difficulty would be, which is why it's so important to make sure that you pick the right keywords. So for it to be a long tail keyword, it needs to be classed as technically more than 3 words. It's used to target niche demographics rather than a mass audience. Again, very, very important, and gets less search traffic, but usually a much higher conversion rate, and as they're much more specific. I mean, more than 70% of Google searches are actually classed as long tail. You know, we've all Googled why does my leg hurt? We've all done it. So this is where we go into the Ahrefs demonstration. This is where I show you some things about the keywords, some useful information based on some of the metrics we showed you, and then show you in some of an actual environment. So I'm using essex.ac.uk as an example for this. I won't go deep into backlinks or anything like this. I'm just going to go into have some of the keywords they're ranking for on the top level, some of the metrics they rank for, and you can see. I'll just go off this now, I've got it already up for me. So this is the University of Essex's link on Ahrefs. Now this is one of the best tools out there for SEO agencies to use. You can see here that they've got an Ahrefs rank, which basically this is Ahrefs' own metrics to dictate how popular and how relevant the website is. Now Ahrefs ranks, I believe it's out of one and 160 million or something like this, but one's usually the most important site. I think one's probably Facebook. And then you've got something called a URL and a domain rating, which a URL rating and domain rating are both out of 100. URL rating is a little bit more based on the popularity, whereas the popularity of your backlink, and a domain rating is more about the authority and the power behind some of those backlinks. And then we've got the actual backlinks themselves. So a lot of people back in the day used to just chuck thousands and thousands and thousands of backlinks at a website and it would come up first page. It's not quite like that anymore. Quality is much more important than quantity nowadays. Oh, hello? So I've got a question.
It's just where we've had someone join us, James. I think they were unmuted, so you probably just had a bit of background noise.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So backlinks, a website that has massive amount of backlinks such as this, a backlink, first of all, anyone can put a backlink on the internet, anyone at all. A backlink is something that is just pasted online and linked to a website. If I was going to put a backlink on anywhere, okay, a backlink could just be a website like this, a button like this, which says acquisition agency. You click it, that's a backlink. Just wanted to give an example of that first because I'm about to talk loads about backlinks. So backlinks are essentially the bread and butter of off-page SEO. Because obviously we're going to be talking more about on-page SEO, but off-page SEO is the other part of it, which we may talk about more in the future. So the different metrics associated with backlinks, so they'll be measured by the same ratings as the current URL is. They'll have the Ahrefs rank, the URL rating, and the domain rating. And then it will be associated with the organic traffic, the organic keywords, traffic value. And you can see here that you've got 21,000 referring domains, which is picked up. So this is a referring domain of the backlinks that's been added. And then we've got sort of the more important, the more interesting things. Okay, the keywords, the organic traffic, and the traffic value assigned to it. So wait for that to load momentarily. So you can see here that we go on some of the more higher volume keywords. You can see here that Office 365 actually ranks. Essex ranks for Office 365. Not very high, but you can see here that for 2.86 million searches is a pretty good place to even appear on it. So what this is it will show the keyword on this row, and then it will have some useful metrics, so we know sort of how difficult it's going to be to target said keyword. And up here, there is the countries as well, because what you might rank in the UK differently to Brazil and the US. But what this is just volume, which is how many people search for it worldwide. In the country. And then there's KD, which is keyword difficulty, which is measured by competition, measured by how many searches, then measured into the CPC rating, which is the cost per click. And that allows us to see sort of how difficult the keyword is going to be to rank, and it will assign a few other decent metrics to it. And then we've got traffic, which is based on, I believe it is based off of how many people you expect to get based on your ranking. It's one of those metrics that can't exactly be 100% listened to at all, but it's on there to be helpful because the system Ahrefs is very expensive. Oh, we have a message. So all of these are, if I Googled Moodle, it would pop up. So these are all the keywords, if you Googled right now, based on the position on this tab, you'd find. So I Google Moodle, we should see Essex somewhere. there are straight number one, because obviously we're in Colchester rather than the UK. But this is there's lots of backlinks that have allowed Moodle to appear, because we've got moodle.essex.ac.uk. Does that answer your question? Just move on. It's not. I forgot. No one can type as quick as me. So all of these keywords, you know, some of them are really, really difficult to apply for. Like you've got a student finance login, the student loans here, which I'm very familiar with this keyword. Anything to do with loans and finance is absolutely extremely difficult to rank for. And you'll see here you actually rank 5th page for this, position 47. So what do you mean by M&T?
Oh, it's just I think what he means is the keyword, there's an M and there's a T. And we also saw Johnny Depp is ranked.
Oh yeah. I skimmed past that. Yeah. I've also just seen Thanos as well, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, there are some websites that can be really difficult to rank for just 2 letters. For instance, I was working on an Asian school recently. We managed to rank them in their prospective company for just 2 letters. You know, it is difficult, but if you persevere enough, it can be done. You know, the Essex University website is so, well, I'm not sure how long it's been live, but there's so many backlinks. So there's years and years of history and content on the website that will allow it to have some sort of foothold for keywords like M&T. You know, the possibilities are endless if the website's really, really old, and there's lots of content that can rely on it as well. What I want to show you next as well is the position. You see here, this is the most reliable section of Ahrefs, which shows you the number 1 position of all the keywords. So you can see here in the United Kingdom, if you Google MSc or MBA, you're number 1 for University of Essex, My Essex, nursing, physiotherapy, all these keywords being picked up as number 1. There again, these will be mixed between branded keywords like University of Essex admissions or something like this. Then there'll be non-branded ones like, I don't know, University in Essex, non-branded. And then we can go into some of the other metrics we've got down here, which shows you some of the graphs to do with some of the keywords. It only allows us to do a certain amount at the moment, because we don't need really much higher than that. We can see here April, July, October. You can see where it was ranking previously on different pages. See multiple pages ranked for this. And then we've got SERP features as well, which I'm sure when you've noticed when you Google something now, you often get things like images pop up or a little description box that's like, hey, it's picked from a select website with loads of content. Or, you know, see people ask thumbnails, top stories, advertisements, because we know Essex use advertisements as well. I think that's pretty much it for the metrics on the Ahrefs. Has anyone got any other questions about the metrics before I go back over? No. There are. So meta description and meta title. Oh yes. So I know, foreshadowing. So with regards to any other tools like Ahrefs, there are hundreds. There is SEMrush, which is another one we use. Alternatives to Ahrefs. There are literally hundreds out there. Ubersuggest is another popular one, which is free, which is owned by Nil Patel. Then I don't use any of these. I use Moz as well, which is another fantastic system out there. And these tools, they've got a range in costs. Most of them are about $100 a month, but there is the fantastic one that's Ubersuggest. Pop up saying Uber Eats then, being caught red-handed. But here we've got here, you can see University of Essex. This is another tool just like it. We can see keyword insights, ideas, SEO statistics for free. And this is Neil Patel up here. Here's the owner.
I will just chip in whilst we're waiting for this to load. If you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, anything like that, and you're interested, he puts out some really good content, both articles and YouTube videos. So if you're looking just for kind of short intros, things like that, it's worth following Neil Patel on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Absolutely. So you see here, it's top with the adverts. It's popped in with the search volume, the difficulty, the paid difficulty, as well as other keywords along the line that you could rank for as well. Really, really, really useful systems. So there are plenty of other alternatives out there. No worries. So back to meta description. So when you Google something, I'm sure you're very, very up close to this one. This is what's on Google when you actually Google a topic or a key phrase. So you've got your title, then you've got your description. It's how you get people. This is more lined in with user experience and than Google, because obviously all this information has got an impact with Google, but this is more about driving people to your store. This has to be written in a way that eludes people. It really wants people to get in there, pay attention, click this advertisement, which is why it can be often difficult to write these descriptions. So the meta title should be between 65 and I think it's 70 characters long. It includes keywords, least important last. If you can get your main keyword number one, fantastic. Like the first thing in there, that's great. But sometimes when you try to over-optimize these meta titles and meta descriptions, sometimes it can come across as a nice boring thing, like by search engine optimization in Colchester, we're fantastic. It comes across as really, really boring. No one's going to want to click that. It's all fun and games getting your main page to page one, but then you've got to actually get people to click it from page one. So it's really important that this bit's taken care of, and you really think about what people are really trying to get there. Do your market research, really find out what is going to make people click that button, and then go on your website rather than the other 10 options on the page, plus advertisements. So this is an example of what we usually do. When you Google anything, you usually get this structure. You got your main keyword, SEO in Colchester, second keyword, rank page one, and third keyword, your brand name, to get your branded keywords up there. This pretty much follows most of the way. We go down here, you've got hot content, which is your primary keyword. Oh no, they've got it the other way around. They've got their branded keyword, then their keyword, which isn't a problem. I've just shown you that when you look at things on this, 99% of the time, you're going to find at least that sort of structure. And then your meta description. So I don't know about yourselves, but I never click on anything if I haven't read the description first. That's because I know just how easy it is to get something to page one. So we need to see if people put the care in to get it there. So your meta description is usually not used for search engines or rankings, but rather to help people understand what's going to be on the website when they click. So it's really important you write it for the readers, not Google, which is what I was speaking about a moment ago. You can get websites to rank with completely irrelevant metadata and meta titles, but it's again, no one's going to click something if you write about tomato plants and your meta description's about golf clubs. It's just not going to happen. So you want to try and keep it under 160 characters. Most of the people in here are going to be using WordPress and websites like this, which have stuff like Yoast or Rank Math, which are plugins for SEO, which are going to give you enough information just to sort of tell you exactly how many characters, include questions, include the right sort of keyword in there, really optimize it for the reader, not just Google. So URL tips. When I mentioned earlier my URL with why are my tomato plants turning yellow, I said it's really easy when you're trying to share a URL with someone. You can be like acquisitionagency.com/why are my tomato plants turning yellow. It's really easy to share a URL because it's very easy to remember. A lot of old time and time ago, you used to be url.com/page equals hundreds of numbers. It's not about that anymore. It's all about URLs that are easy to share. It needs to be picked up by Google. So it's really important that you include your keywords, but you do not stuff them now, which is what some people are doing. It's very easy for me to put my website link.seo and Colchester, best SEO, but it's not going to go very well. It's keyword stuffing. Google's going to hate it, as well as no one's going to want to click that on Google because it just sounds so unprofessional. So again, when I wrote the URL, I said it's really important you remove the spaces and used hyphens. It's just the way it works. You can get other different ways in URLs, but hyphens the best way. So you can see that ideal -blog -post -length is there, which is the ideal one. But sometimes you can get a domain like apple.com/ and you've got a little bit more leeway with how lengthy your domains are. With regards to the length of your domain, in my professional experience, I've never had a website that has a really, really long name never rank. But I've had a problem when you're trying to tell someone on a whim, at the pub pre-COVID, sort of being like, hey, my website's blah, 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 and they've forgotten by the time they've left. It's really important that you try and keep your URLs at a length that's not too long, but easy to remember. Don't use strange characters as well. These strange characters, sometimes you notice when you share something with spaces, it will add like percentage sign 20 in, which is just what it does. So it's really important you don't add these strange characters in yourself, because Google has characters that it assigns for strange entrances, like a space in a URL. And you'll notice when we put a URL, we don't include stop words, a, to, in, and. Google have systems that stop that. It doesn't need to be. They don't need to be added at all. It just inflates URL length. Because you add an A, you then need to add 2 hyphens, so it adds 3 characters. It's just better to not do it. Then we've got the snakes and ladders approach, which is something that I usually do when I'm building a website. So you congratulations, I built my website. So then I often have a stop list of what needs to be done. So have I set up the meta title and descriptions on each page? Is the URL friendly? Is it /SEO Colchester? Yes, it is. Is the content optimized? Is it a good 1,000-word article? Is the content written with the keyword, 1 to 2%? Is it all done? Is the H1, H2 hierarchy done? Am I even targeting the right keywords? And if all of that's done, I'm on my way. Things are well. It's about a baseline. You don't have to do everything, but if you can do some of the things, it's going to do you the world of favors. Does anyone have any questions about this? This is just so basic, just because it's what I think about when I'm doing something when you're doing a website.
I have a question. What makes a URL friendly?
So with it not being like elenaswebsite.com /91586%, all these weird things, you want it to be like elenaswebsite.com /my-website, friendly for the reader and friendly for Google.
Right, thank you.
I think that's the best way for me to describe it. So this is really bare bones, because if we were going to do every single thing to perfection, like you see in these big scary website audits, it would just take you so much time. Whereas if you can do some of it, it's better than not doing none of it. And anything you do in terms of optimizing your content, making URL friendly, and setting up each meta title description the way that the reader wants as well, is going to provide you about tenfold. So we're on to the bit just about questions and answers now. We got there in the end. I've not bored anyone, I hope. Does anyone have any questions? Look, if you've got any questions about your own websites, I'm here.
All right. Whilst people are having a think about questions, I just want to say thanks very much for that, James. I think for me, the way that you went through that from start to finish has kind of made it very clear. And one thing we recognize when you're starting out with your own business is you're looking for how you can do things yourselves. And we always kind of say, yes, there's a certain degree which you can do things yourselves, but hopefully as you attract customers or you generate revenue, you can look to move beyond what you do yourself and there are companies out there, people like James and Harry who are kind of working with us today. It's about knowing the right time when to invest in things like this, but you need to kind of determine what that looks like for your business. You need to understand that within your finances. But I think that's been a fantastic kind of breakdown for myself, James, just to kind of hear it from start to finish, and kind of things like not underestimating the impact of kind of things like backlinks. So where else are you being featured that are directing people to you? There are online directories and things like that you can pay to, but is that a healthy backlink to have? You've got to think about these things, but also your articles, can you start to create some content that other individuals are using the link to your blog piece that's on your website? Are they sharing that on their own sites? Are they doing it on social media and things like that? It's a great way, I think, kind of to kind of introduce the subject, and I've really enjoyed that. And I kind of learned things myself as well over the last hour, so I really appreciate it. Would any? Yeah, Magda.
To James, was it, or it used to be back, well, when I first did my very first few websites, obviously SEO has moved on so much and I haven't really caught up with the latest, so this was really great training as well. But it used to be that backlinks, well, very, very early on, backlinks were like the key of, getting featured on wedding blogs, getting featured everywhere. But you weren't supposed to link back to them again. So it would be a reciprocal link that is less value, or was of less value to Google than a one-way backlink. But then all of it changed again. So I have no idea where it stands now with backlinks. That would just be a personal inquiry.
No, there used to be so many different ways and methods that were able to do it back in the day. You used to have automated tools that just create backlinks, and that was it. You start it on Monday, finish the campaign on a Friday, and your website's ranking by next Monday. It used to be a lot easier than it is now. Regarding like placements and links, Google really cracked down on that lately, based on sort of guest posting. So a guest post is where you essentially you link. It can be monetary guest post, you paid for it, or it can be like a shared link. You post an article about their website on yours, and they post about an article on your website about them. I think I got tongue-tied then. But they used to really crack down on that because it was a cheeky SEO method to do. Now it's more about the quality of the website. Some of the people that want to do guest posts, sometimes their quality of the website isn't quite the best you want to associate yourself with. Whereas if it's a really, really good website, if Essex want to put something about acquisition agency on there, I'd be absolutely down for that. But it's about having the links.
Nope, you unmute.
How did that happen? I don't know about that, sorry. Yeah, if it's all about the metrics that I showed you earlier on, this slide. If we go on here and we can see that Essex University has an 80 domain rating or a 31-year-old rating, and they've got 190,000 keywords they're ranking for. In this situation, I'd be like, okay, sure, Google's unlikely to penalize me for it. But if it's a small website that's not quite as good as that, sometimes it's a good job. Sometimes it's not. It's more about having a look on this blog site. Is the articles on that website you want to get a link from? Are they high quality? Is there any stuff that is not okay in Google's eyes? Is there any content that you would not want to associate with your website? It is very, very difficult now to find the right sort of placements because of how heavily on tier they are quality rather than quantity now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Any other questions? So Jane, we've got Feng. I was just going to say, what we're going to do is once we wrap up the Q&A, James won't be in the sort of next part of the session, but if there are kind of questions that come through afterwards, what we can do is we can introduce you by email and you can send something over, and James will get back to you hopefully as and when he can. But Feng, did you want to come in with a question?
Yeah, my question is, what are your thoughts on website builders and how they affect SEO? because there's a lot of criticism on this is terrible for it.
I knew this was going to come. It's the one question I prepared myself for. If you're using website builders like Wix.com or Webflow.io, they are getting there, but it's never going to be the same as a solution that's been developed. You know, these free website builders are so convoluted in a way for trying to make it really easy for the user. When I say convoluted, I mean convoluted like code-wise. They're trying to make it really easy for the user, not Google. And that goes against what we're trying to do here. I think WordPress technically has themes that do it. I use WordPress. As long as you go over, it can be done, sorry. You can use a website on Wix or a builder on WordPress or anything like that. It's just really important afterwards that you do pay attention to the URL structures, the H1 hierarchy, because these web builders will literally chuck title content in a p tag and all these different tags completely muddled up. So just be careful with it and just pay attention to the SEO and it should be okay. But I would avoid them personally.
So WordPress is fine, right? WordPress is like the bare minimum.
Yeah, so WordPress is a bit of a different situation. It's a blogging platform that you build onto with themes. Now, there are certain themes that you literally drag and drop. You know, they're very, very prominent, but which is why you have to install other plugins on top, like Yoast, which sorts out the majority of the issues, or Rank Math that does as well. But it's really important that you then go on and make sure that you check every single tags. Because certain builders as well on WordPress, if you've got an image on the page, they don't carry over the alt tag for images, which is a really important way. When you put an image up, you need to explain to Google what this image is. If a blind person was on the website, they need the alt tag, tells them or reads them what the website's about, and Google pays attention to that. It's really important that some builders don't do things like this.
Great, thank you very much. I'll tell you what, if there is one more question, I will allow it. And then what we'll do is we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back for the second half of the session. So are there any last questions from anyone in the audience? Feel free to unmute yourselves. I suppose, again, coming back to what we've just spoken about, James, recognizing that there's always an aspect to when you're starting up, you're trying to do certain amounts yourself. If people are looking to do that first bit of training, maybe to do the basics or the fundamentals, imagine, doesn't matter if they've kind of had it done on WordPress or Wix or anything else, what's the best way for someone to learn kind of just the basics or the introductory steps, you know, to keep them going, maybe just to get their website up and running before maybe getting to a position where they could possibly afford a digital marketing agency?
So I'm completely self-taught with this anyway. Oh, sorry, I had a timer up and that's just killed me. So I'm completely self-taught, and I think one of the best ways that I learned was I started off on YouTube, because when you're trying to learn something and you don't really want to spend hundreds of pounds on courses or even a paid proper course, not just one on Udemy or something. So I learned the absolute fundamentals and the basics via YouTube and asking educated people. You know, don't be afraid to ask questions. All they can ever say is, no, I'm sorry, I've got no time. I'm not going to throw it back in your face. So ask questions, YouTube. YouTube is an absolute massive resource and it's helped me loads. I'm constantly on it. And then look at things like Udemy that has thousands and thousands of complete start, advanced or basic to advanced, advanced to master level SEO. There's so many resources available online. And yeah, forums as well. There's website forums like Black Hat World. There's so many different SEO forums available where you can ask questions of like-minded individuals that all we're trying to do at the end of the day is rank a website on Google. We all know that. So yeah, just research.
Thank you very much. All right, I think on that note, what we'll do is we'll draw the first half of the session to a close. Just wanted to say thanks again to James for his time this afternoon. It's been really interesting, and like I say, kind of the way you kind of led us through it really helped make it easy to follow. So thanks very much for your time. What we're going to do for the next part of the session is we'll take a few minutes break. So we'll come back at 10 past, and then I'm going to be going through email marketing with you, looking at how you can use words kind of increase sales and things like that. So thanks very much to James for your time, and for everyone else who's hanging around. We'll be back in just over 5 minutes for the second half of the session. Take care. Thanks very much, James.
Thank you, James.
Bye.
Thank you.
About this, and we keep saying, but we really have to think about the diverse ways of how you influence. Thank you, Bowen, for using the thumbs up as well. That's useful. It's really useful to think about the diversification of your marketing channels. And email often gets forgotten, sometimes because it's perceived to be harder work. There's some negative connotations around email. I think difficulties since GDPR came in and things like this. But actually, I'm perfectly honest, I think they need to be dispelled. For me, email is one of the optimal ways of acquiring customers, speaking to customers and selling to customers. And when we talk about different things, so even the SEO session you've just heard and the email session I'm about to kind of go through, these things link back to your brand. You have to think about how you are doing things that link to your brand, what represents your business, your tone of voice. So even, again, thinking about what James was mentioning, how does your brand, how does your tone of voice come across in things like the title of your website? How does it come across in terms of the meta tags or meta titles that you use? So what we're going to do is we're going to spend about maybe half hour just talking about some practical ways of structuring. So this is less about, using email, and it's more about actually kind of what I would say are copywriting or content writing tips for you to kind of think about. So I know some of you already know this, but my background is as a copywriter, and I will be perfectly honest, I was rubbish at writing when I was at university, and it's something that somehow one day, in terms of a sales approach to writing, it just clicked, and I was very fortunate. I was able to build a business around it, and I do still enjoy it. But it was just one of those things that I realized the more I did as well, the better I got. And with writing, certainly when we're talking about our business, it can be difficult to put ourselves in the shoes of the customer, and we write it very business centric, and we need to shift the thinking to the reader rather than the writer. So just wanted to go through a few aspects of why you should be considering email. So first of all, it is actually defined as being more effective than social media for customer acquisition. They actually say that email marketing has an 80% customer acquisition rate compared to social media, which sits at about 60%. So you have to take time to build up your email lists. And again, I'm not going to cover it today, but you have to think about how, collecting data, whether or not that's customer data, people registering for updates or newsletters on your website, whatever that may look like, it has to fit into as part of a much broader funnel. But if email's more effective than social media, then it gives us the kind of that first hook as to why we should consider it. Next up is that it's more cost effective and you can do a lot more on lower budgets. I looked this up earlier today, and if I can find the link to the article, I'll share it. But email has a 40 times return on investment. So for every £1 you spend through having qualified lists of recipients with an offer, meeting certain kind of benchmarks, you can actually generate up to a 40 times ROI on email as well. And you do see sometimes these things on social media, but depending on kind of on what you see, I was just on LinkedIn. I've got a friend who does Facebook ads. He's been generating anywhere between 16 and 18% ROI, but email is well and truly ahead there. And again, it's another reason it's often underestimated. You do have the ability to personalize and customize email. So again, depending on the nature of what your business is, you're able to target people and make them have that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling as opposed to maybe a cold, hard advert on social media. It has a clear focus on customer actions, unlike a social media post, which can be kind of trying to demonstrate a range of kind of probably sales approaches more often. Your focus is on customer action. So it wouldn't necessarily be always about selling, but it may be kind of about asking them to visit something. It might be watching a video. It may be asking them to click through. So you have a greater ability to channel where your customer goes through your email. And with a lot of tools that are out there at the moment, you've got much higher abilities to measure the impact of your campaigns. On, a bit like you saw on Ahrefs, on, things like Salesforce, MailChimp, Microsoft Dynamics, whatever you choose to use, you're going to see things like open rates, click-through rates, bounce rates. If you are linked to an e-commerce store, you can see how many people go through and generate sales. One of the roles I used to work with a health foods company, and we could see that on average, the emails we sent out on a Wednesday would generate between $7,000 to $10,000 worth of sales in the next week. And I could see all of that information just by logging into their MailChimp page because they'd connected all of the accounts. And again, I think it ties into mobile first. I'm not sure about anyone else. And again, I'm quite happy to have a thumbs up, thumbs down here. I have turned off notifications for nearly all other apps apart from Gmail. Thumbs up, thumbs down, anyone? Or am I thumbs up? Fenger's thinking. Fenger's very much in the middle. Magda's sort of thumbs up. Now, again, if this is your customer and you're trying to get them to think about how you are demonstrating you have something of interest to them, we have to start thinking about customer behavior. So the reason I like email, again, is because for certain companies that email me, and I'm not saying I click through on all of them, but certain brands, I will then open that email, go and read it, but for others I won't. So again, it's about having that qualified list of recipients before you start. And I might flip between two phrases over the next half hour, copywriting versus content writing. And the way I tend to kind of position this is copywriting is all about a sales focus. You may hear things like, if you do much research around this, you may hear things like direct response copywriter or direct copywriter. So this is someone who is literally writing something just for sales, to generate sales, generate revenue, whatever that looks like. A content writer, slightly different, tends to be about building connection with the audience through providing information. So I used to work with a guy who was doing software development, used to do a lot of work with teams at places like Sky, Jaguar Land Rover, NHS. And over the space of 12 months, I did a content strategy, which was designed to get him in front of more potential customers. We weren't trying to sell. What we were trying to demonstrate was domain knowledge and expertise. So for me, that's the very kind of real difference. What's important to know is when you should use them, because it very much comes down to what you are trying to achieve. And your emails may have slightly different approaches. Some may be content driven, some may be copy driven. It depends on sales cycles. It may be the differences you're leading up to events. You may want to provide extra information, things like that. Elena, if it's okay to use Essex DocFest as an example, obviously you've got a series of directors that you've kind of worked with and now have the ability to access. There'll come a time maybe where you're going to be approaching them, asking them to consider submissions for the next one, and there is a sales approach to that because there's a small cost associated. But between that time, you might want to focus on a content approach. So how do you keep them up to date with industry changes or what you're working on? And they have very different remits, very different purposes, and very different benefits to the customer as well. So why is it important to get it right? For me, there are three key reasons. First is to develop your brand. The second is to improve engagement. And the third is to direct towards sales. And you have to flick between these three. It's not to say that they only have to be one in each instance, but it can be quite difficult. What you're trying to do is establish your company, build your reputation, develop engagement, and ultimately lead to or generate sales. And it's a little bit cheesy, but again, what I used to say was the right words can make you money, the wrong words can cost you customers. Which would you prefer? This is kind of the mantra I used to take into meetings with customers. And it was very much a case of them saying, well, I know what I'm writing. I know how to write about my business. But they would never see results from what they wrote. So it's about understanding how you position yourself. And the reason that so many people get it wrong is because they don't think about their audience. They think about themselves. They think about their business. They're business-centric, business-focused. And it's okay to be that way, but you need to change the words that you use. You need to put the business or the message of the business at the heart of the content or the heart of the copy that you're writing. And you need to turn it into the customer being the person that you're targeting. So I've purposely put in bold there 3 times the word them. I gave a very similar presentation a little while ago for another university. And it was very much a case of, what are you doing for them? You know, sometimes you can say, in my instance, if I was to email, be like, I am a copywriter, I do X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. That's absolutely fine, but I haven't actually told the customer what I'm going to do. I haven't told them how I'm going to translate something for them. So for your businesses, think about, again, we talk about this quite often in the startup side, the why, the how, and the what. And it absolutely applies to how you do your email marketing as well. So I'm sure you've all experienced this as well. You get probably, I don't know, 25, 50, 100 emails a day from different companies or different individuals. And you're very selective over which ones you open. And that often comes down to the subject line. So as a rule of thumb, my approach to this are the 4 U's. So you have to make subject lines when you're doing your email marketing useful. You have to tell the customer enough information. You have to make it unique. It has to stand out from the other emails that they're receiving. You have to add a sense of urgency. You know, you have to kind of make them want to open that email rather than think, oh, okay, I'll do it later. But it also has to be really specific. These 4 U's are kind of driven by trying to make the person receive it go, this feels really personal to me. It feels time sensitive to me. I've got a real interest in what this, you know, the subject line is saying. I'm going to click this email. So there's a few different ways you can write catchy subject lines, but you need to underpin it with these 4 U's, I find. And there's a really good tool, I'll demonstrate it in a little while, that you can use to test how effective your subject line is at catching people's attention. So when you're writing your emails, it depends on the way that you're looking at. There's another kind of 3 alternative approaches to writing. A lot of these structures are very similar, but it's a bit like the old beginning, middle, end. You have to have a story arc for what you're presenting to your customer. So the problem solution approach, again, is you state the problem, you agitate that with the customer. So you try and pick that nerve or kind of just provoke them that little bit into going, yeah, actually they understand it. Even just by mentioning it in an email, you can kind of produce a result or a response in them. And then you talk about how you solve it. You can, you know, again, using different approaches, you can bridge the gap. So you could describe a problem, you can explain how it could be improved, and then again, you demonstrate how you solve it. There's a few others. So there's the 4 Ps, and that is where you paint a picture. You can sort of promise how things could be done better. You can prove it by saying, you know, this is what you do for other companies. And then you can kind of push customers towards your own sort of personal, you know, product or service that they may want to choose. So those are kind of 3 examples I've got there, but there's a one that I prefer to go to, and it's typically used in sales pitches, but it can help to reinforce messages. So it's called the Minto principle. And what this is it again, it takes that story approach. And as you can see there, it's SCQA. And I think, I'm not sure if I added the A or if it's kind of optional, but it takes the user through, or the reader through, these 5 steps. And these can be really quick. These can just be 1 sentence approaches. But you start with a defining statement. So again, Elena, if it's okay to use your example, it's just like, directors in the film industry are completely undervalued at awards. So, you know, you're making a really bold statement. So if a director sees that in an email, they're going to probably go, oh, hang on, that's quite a bold statement. I'm interested, because again, it appeals directly to me. a confirmation. So you can follow that up with a statistic or a percentage. And I don't know if this is true, but you could say 95% of them are eating beans on toast because they're not paid well enough for the work that they do. You know, that kind of thing. And then the question is, you know, should this be solved through an awards ceremony that treats directors with the respect, you know, that they deserve? You have to find your own words in this particular instance. And then the answer, and you might kind of finish with, at Essex DocFest, we believe in putting directors first. This is how we do it. So suddenly you've taken your email and you've given it color, you've given it context, and you've kind of breathed life into it. So an example I had is that I used to work with a company who do agritech solutions. And I was given that as a statement, and this is what the owner had written. You know, we offer digital solutions to solve problems for farmers. It's okay, but it doesn't really say much. And also, farmers can be very difficult people to move into the 21st century. They're more likely to invest into things like machinery for kind of tractors and combines and things like that, rather than a tech solution. So what I did was I sat down with them, and again, you know, as the owners of your business, you'll see the problems, you'll know the challenges, you'll have your value propositions, you have your customer segments. You should have all of this laid out in front of you. We went through just a really sort of short process, and then what I ended up doing was I put it into this structure, so you can see the statement, you can see the confirmation. I added the question, we put the answer in, and then the affirmation again. You know, you can bring people back with new or improved statistics about what that means. And just off the back of this, he got 3 new customers and brought in about 120,000 Australian dollars worth of revenue, because he changed the message. Instead of saying tie up farming, which is the name of the business, offer digital solutions to solve problems for farmers, he put the reader first. So he made all of the information that he provided about the reader. Yes, he demonstrated a problem-solving approach, but he made it so that the reader had a reason to go through that email, to click through, because this was done on MailChimp. They then had an option to click through and book a one-to-one meeting with Rowie. And like I say, he had 3 people go through, led to new business development. And although I don't work with him anymore, I can see that his company's still going pretty strong at the moment, and he's developing into Asia and South America at the moment. So when you're doing your email marketing, think about kind of certain things. I'm going to talk about some of the pitfalls and some of the things to avoid. But again, this email went out probably similar to how it is, a few images, a little bit of branding, and then ultimately, again, what we're trying to do is move people to a call to action. So again, I'm sure you've seen these in lots of different aspects. You might see the words sign up now, register here, you know, reserve your space, whatever that looks like. When you're doing email marketing, and it depends on the kind of the tool or the program, the mail provider that you're using, doesn't really matter. You have to have a reason to drive people to take action. You can have them scattered throughout an email. So depending on the length of a newsletter, if it's quite short, then you would typically just have it in the final paragraph. If maybe you think about what we call the digital fold. So when you first open an email, you'll see the top maybe 25% of the actual email itself. You might want a call to action button in that first 25%. So people see that actually there's enough information for them to make a decision and straight away click through. Using a call to action, again, what you want to do is reiterate, but not repeat the points of the text above. You're very much saying that at this point in time, you are offering something different. And what we're trying to do is move a customer through into that next step. Some of the mistakes we make is sometimes we put a call to action in as a sentence. So it'd be like, click here to go through and book your space and, you know, reserve your seat for this event. Depending on what you're using, again, you know, brevity can be more useful to the reader than it can be to provide too much information. So similar to kind of the 4 U's at the bottom there, you can see have that sense of urgency, have that sort of ability to persuade the reader, add an element of exclusivity. You know, this is something for them. So the whole message from start to finish has been crafted and tailored with the reader in mind. So even your call to action, you know, sorry, Elena, it's just too easy. You know, coming back to DocFest, it could be, you know, book a call to discuss your director's slot at Essex DocFest. You know, if you wanted to do like a panel event or something like that, you can tailor the call to action again to your audience. You can make it really personal, and then increase your chances of moving them through that kind of sales funnel closer to the point where we want them to be. So I've only actually got a few slides left. So I think going through this quite quickly, but if you need me to go back or cover anything again, please let me know. So the common mistakes are, again, people either make their content too long or too short, and typically this is when they don't have enough to say or they don't know what to say. So again, you know, think about a content plan. If you have key cycles in the particular industry you're working in, think about how that might map onto what you're talking about at any particular time. A lot of businesses are terrible for telling their customers what they're bad at doing, and people don't like being told what the problem is. They like being led towards a solution. So again, they're ignoring the benefit to the reader. You are trying to explain how you can alleviate a problem. Again, think about that value proposition. I've written here, forget corporate voice, and I mean this with all respect intended. As graduates or university students, you need to forget your academic voice. You need to find your business voice. You need to find your brand voice. And you need it to be consistent with how people perceive you. So when I was a copywriter, one of the approaches I used to have was that I wouldn't necessarily swear lots, but I used to kind of say that, you know, there's a lot of bad copywriters out there, and I was seeing people getting fleeced with things that just weren't working for them. So I used to kind of use kind of my personal tone of voice to put that message across. But when I first started, I'd worked at a university. I'd written a lot for a university, and I was still using a corporate voice, but I realized that wasn't right. I needed to use my brand voice. So think about how you do that. Stop using maybe words. And these maybe words are things like that, then, or and, you know, things like that. We need to kind of just be direct with what we say. Customers are not looking for ambiguity. They're not looking for gray. They're looking for black and white. You know, they are looking for facts. They are looking for a clear, direct message. And again, although I don't have the stats on it, when we think about things like attention spans, we know they're shorter than ever. People can easily get distracted. The moment you get one email in and you're reading it and another sort of pops up, you're already losing attention to that initial piece of content. So think about how you keep your reader moving through in a very direct way. Again, we've all seen this. Don't use things like clickbait, and don't try and force humor. If it doesn't come naturally, don't try. If it does come naturally, be careful. Remember, these are words on a page. These are not you delivering it, so that intonation isn't there. You need to understand that people interpret a joke in 10 different ways, and it can backfire based on how it's written. So do have a think about that. Again, people sometimes forget to proofread. If you can feel stressed, you're trying to get things out on time. Magda's got a wonderful example from today. I'm not sure I can share it, but if ever there was a moment where I laughed out loud without having any conversation with anyone, it was Magda's. Let's just say Magda dropped the R out of the word shirt and sent this back to well, not a customer, but someone we're working with. And it's fine. I want to say it's just one of those moments, but as you know, not everyone will find things like that funny. I'm sorry, Magda, it's too good an opportunity. I didn't even think about mentioning that when I started.
I didn't see it, and obviously that was like the most unfortunate place where you can drop an R.
Yeah. But again, you know, this isn't just about communications on a daily basis. You know, this is you going out to your customers. Really have a think about that.
I've got one story, Andy, which is very true. As I worked with an American franchise company, and they sent out, they had templated documents that used to go out to all your customers, and one of the ones was neighborhood being spelt in an American way, and it was an academic coaching company, and it went out to everybody, and it had this neighborhood spelling, the US neighborhood spending, and it looked atrocious. It looked like we hadn't even bothered to read what was actually out there. We didn't actually have any control on it, but it went out and I literally got 4 or 5 emails back from people and telephone calls basically saying, if you can't speak English, how are you supposed to educate my children? And that was the damage done on one thing that was literally beyond our control. But it was just simply the Americanization of words like neighborhood and color and things like that. And particularly if you're using templated documents that originate in America, double check it and double read everything. That was a lesson. It cost me about £6,000, that one mistake. And and brand wise, it damaged me enormously, I think. So
Yeah, and again, thinking about things like proofreading, it's also about checking kind of things. So if you use mail merge or anything like that, I've received emails that say dear, and then you get the ampersands and it says customer name. If anything ever puts me off working with a company, it's receiving an email where they can't get something like that right. So again, test your emails before you send them. As much as I've sort of said proofread, again, a lot of these systems have the ability to test. I've seen companies that were selling things or should have been selling things for $1,000. Someone accidentally put a decimal place in and it was only going to cost you $10, which is a bargain as far as I'm concerned. Again, thinking about James's experience, these things have consequences and they can have consequences for your businesses. So just really do think about that.
I was just going to say as well about considering subject lines as well and the length that some sharing allows you, because I did a small ads where it was your chance to win a Christmas hamper and the subject line cut me off, so it read your chance to win Christ, which was shocking for everyone. However, I did get people talking about it and they took it in the spirit that it was a complete mistake and not my fault. But yeah, maybe just something else to think about.
Yeah, and again, similar to what James spoke about with the length of meta titles earlier, longer titles can be better because they give more information. If you can use shorter titles and still deliver the same message, you should. And it's really difficult because both have benefits. You have to decide for yourself. So using gerunds.
One more thing to say, which is that also when you're producing something, it appears on a digital format. Check the dimension, check what it looks like on tablet, mobile, and website. Because again, we did a publication for a networking group which was called Essex Networking, and because when you truncated it into the telephone, it lost the ES in front of the Essex bit, so it ended up with sex networking competition or something like that. So again, it's a very similar thing to doing all of those stuff, but it's just you don't think about it when you do it. You do it in the format that you're looking at, and then you fail to test all of the other kind of relevant structures. It saves embarrassment as much as anything else.
Yeah, and just looking at these last two, so we've got using gerunds. So gerunds are when you add the ing supposition at the end. So this actually weakens words. It's the difference between using something like the word use or using. So again, it sounds really silly. What we're looking for is kind of the links to the human psychology. We want kind of them to form a real connection to the words that you're using. So really think about how you sort of put your subject line together, how you might put a title line together, what the bulk of your text reads like. And again, people use too many ands. Rather than using maybe 5 short sentences, people may try to use 2 long sentences. You get to that point where actually you've forgotten the point of the first half of the sentence. And if you have to go back and reread it, or your customer has to go back and reread it, again, what you're doing is you're not making their life easy, you're not making it convenient. So think about how you structure your text as well. So finally, I also want to say, as much as we've spoken about some of these things, I need to kind of emphasize, don't stress about it. Notice how I didn't talk about all these kind of 6 points. And the reason I didn't talk about them is because truthfully, I wouldn't know how to explain some of these things. I'm not an English teacher. We learn to write, it becomes natural, but we do improve over time. We know what sounds right, we know what sounds wrong. We can look at good sentence construction, we can look at bad sentence construction. these are things we worry about too much. But there are kind of, like I say, the two exceptions at the bottom that I say are always get proper nouns correct. So again, these are names, jobs, places, things like that, and apostrophes. If ever you want a grammar kind of warrior to come after you, it's when you drop the apostrophe in the wrong place. And I don't have it, but again, there's kind of examples. You know, it's the difference between knowing your, was it your shit or knowing your shit? You know, that kind of example. It's, you know, if you get that wrong, it's how it reflects on. Sorry, Magda, I just realised I'm talking about the t-shirts again. But try not to worry about these things. You know, if you can proofread, get someone else to check it. You know, like I say, I don't worry about those top 6 things when I'm writing something, you know, because we know enough, we've got enough experience. Your academic writing will have helped you to develop so many skills. But the difference is an academic style of writing is so different to business. What you need to do is now translate that across. But from the time that you spent, you know, studying or kind of writing your dissertation, anything like that, you've developed good writing skills. Now what you need to do is you need to transfer those in a different environment with a different reader. So it's not going to be a tutor or a lecturer or a prof. It's going to be a customer. It's going to be a decision maker. It's going to be a purchaser. So think about how that changes as well. So just very quickly, I've just put MailChimp in. There are lots of alternatives. Like I said, there's HubSpot, there's Salesforce, there's Microsoft Dynamics, you know, and everything. The reason I kind of said about going for MailChimp again is, for me, I really like it. It's very easy to put templates together. You know, the example you can see here, where the white boxes are would be text, where the kind of light gray ones are, you can drop images in, things like that. It helps break it up. It keeps the attention of the reader. It makes them wonder what's going to come next. So do think about using a tool like MailChimp, whatever you prefer. Try a few different ones. Typically they're free up to like a couple thousand email addresses. You may be limited on the number you can send per week or per month. But again, you know, think about using something. It looks more professional than just sending something from Gmail or Outlook or things like that. It maybe adds a little bit more time in terms of constructing it. But typically what you may also find is, depending on how often you're emailing, you may find one template. It becomes very quick and easy just to drag and drop an image in, you know, how much text you've got and all of these things. And it can be kind of really, really helpful just to have a tool like this, which just kind of, for me, adds that slightly more professional element to sending email marketing kind of materials out. So three useful tools, or rather 4, if you're looking at dictionary.com and thesaurus.com. I actually think these are underrated by businesses because you struggle for words, you struggle to find the same way of using the word good or great or excellent, whatever that may be. So the thesaurus.com comes in, you know, really helpful. Again, thinking about spelling mistakes, dictionary.com does help you to make sure that, you know, if you're not sure of the word or anything like that. I'm going to show you Share Through in a second, but this is a tool you can test on how engaging your headline is. And again, when we're talking about title case, so, you know, thinking about meta tags, you know, meta titles, subject lines, things like this, capitalization on certain words, you know, it's good practice. It's not essential, I think. It does change. It depends on your brand. It depends on your tone of voice. Some businesses do it, some people don't, and it's really sort of up to you to decide. If you're not sure on the rules, the great thing about this site is, again, you can just go along, you can write your title into that box of text. You can click capitalize, and it does all the useful things. And you know, as much as it's online, you've even got this on things like Microsoft Word nowadays. So it just depends how you're operating. If you're drafting it in Word and then you're copying and pasting it into, you know, a mail provider, you can do that. If you're doing it all online, again, there's another tool. So what I'm going to do just quickly is I'm just going to stop sharing that screen, and I'm just going to see if I can get Share Through up for you. Whilst I'm doing that, are there any questions on kind of writing style or structure. I appreciate that's a little bit different in terms of what we normally talk about in some of these sessions, but I wanted it to be a little bit more hands-on and more kind of practical. So I tell you what, I've got let's do a competition on the spot, depending on how people feel. I'm going to ask you all to come up with a headline, and what we're going to do is we're going to see who can come up with the highest scoring headline. But it's for a good reason. It just kind of demonstrates. So this website looks at psycholinguistics. It analyzes text, and it looks at different factors. So does anyone want to go first? I can go first, but I've tested this, so I know roughly what score I would get. So I'm being honest, so I don't look that impressive in front of you all when I do this. Any willing participants? All right, I'll tell you what, I will show you. So as an example, you know, if I was looking to sort of send this type of message out, and I came to the website and I wanted to see how well it ranked, I would type it in, I click find out, and what it will do, tells you the headline quality score, and it gives you some suggestions on kind of things you can do here on the right hand side. And then as you come down, it looks at two things, so engagement and impression, and these are slightly different things. So impression is very much around what they call context words, or kind of driving words. So these are kind of words that people kind of link to and connect to. You can see I was testing sort of some of them down here. So you can see how to achieve the best email open rates in 24 hours, got slightly higher. And what this does is it just demonstrates how variations in language can impact kind of what they call positive or negative sentiment within writing. You can sort of see how the engagement changes and what the impression rates are. Now, the problem with this is you can get hung up on trying to get them all to a certain level. What we're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is say, what's the best we can get right now? Because again, as you improve your writing style, you'll notice this is also not something to live by or die by, but it's just a useful tool to actually say, you know what, am I going to send something out that's going to catch people's attention? And I'm just trying to find it on the bottom here. There's a link as well to a PDF which gives you 1,200 impression words, and it sort of shows that even by including one or two of those, my score would go up by maybe 3 or 4 points as well. So again, this isn't something that is guaranteed to work. It's just something that can help guide you in the right direction as you're getting started with email marketing. You have to find your own way to do this. And again, don't be put off by getting lower scores. I'm not saying that at all, because it may be relevant the way that you write, the style, the structure to your particular customers. This is just showing best practice and kind of what you may achieve. Does anyone want to think about a headline or subject line to try to put into this and see how they score? Are you ready for a grand adventure? Oof. Put the question mark in as well just to see. So notice how, again, strength, you know, for this particular talk, it talks about limited use of passive language. So you're not being too vague, but you're still not being quite, you know, specific. So are you ready for a grand adventure? And here you might change it to, and I don't know if this will change anything, but you might want to say in the USA, because it might be, this could be a holiday blogging site or something like that. So suddenly you're changing it and you're kind of saying, well, okay, can I be more specific? Yes. I felt a little bit of pressure there, I'm not going to lie. But again,
put in like for 2021 or something like that in?
Yes.
Or would that be then?
So again, yeah, what I'll say is, again, we're looking at the engagement score and impression score, you know, we're being more specific. So it says, you know, suggestions, increased headline length. You can use more alert words and, you know, talk about the body, use context words in USA. So let's see in 2021. Let's just see what this does. I'm not sure. Oh. I can't explain why, and I don't know. So, but again, it may be if you want to kind of play around with it. And sometimes I spent far too much time on this website, but mostly because I'm a bit of a word nerd. You might want to think about those kind of memorable kind of words as well that you might be adding. Oh, I tell you what, I am nervous watching with you lot watching whilst I do this. But again, notice how suddenly the engagement score goes up. I've added what I kind of would describe as kind of an emotive word, unforgettable. You know, these could be people looking at a holiday. It could be a honeymoon. You know, these could be one of a lifetime trips. This is all, again, contextual to the type of content you're writing about, the industry you're writing about. But like I say, this isn't necessarily something that you can live by or die by. But it can be just a useful tool. And again, it just gives you an idea as to how maybe kind of part of the science behind sentence construction can work. So submit your filming.
No, I mean, because I think the.
So, but again, you know, you've got things to that, you know, suggestions on this right-hand side. Don't open this email. All right, Medina. I'm intrigued now by what you're sending people, but. So don't open this email.
I can see if I can just, in fact, I'll see if I can pull out.
So again, you've got that, what we call like a fear factor. You know, you're piquing curiosity, but I think there would be ways to strengthen it as well by almost kind of saying, unless you want to find, in your instance, the best vegan restaurants in London, you know, you would then personalize it to your particular customer base. So I'll do one more, and then what I'll do is I'll just put the link in. So again, you know, not much change, but if when you scroll down again, suddenly your impression has dropped massively because you used kind of lots of these small connecting words. You haven't used any big emotionally driven or emotionally charged words. So again, here, I'm not sure if it says, it depends on the way that you structure a sentence, but one of the recommendations is, again, as humans, we want to kind of have that fear of missing out. We want to have that scared tactic as part of what you're being sent as well. You want to develop that intrigue. So these are different ways that you can do it. So again, what I'll do is I will just pop this link into the chat box, and then if some of you are still awake at 3 a.m. testing these things, please send me an email to let me know, and I'll never share it ever again, just in case you get addicted to it like I did. But like I say, that was everything I just wanted to talk through. It just wanted to be kind of almost like a fundamentals of good practice for email marketing. You know, you have to try it for yourself. You have to try the right tools for yourself. And really, you know, I'm quite open to Q&A. What I'd say is don't fear email marketing. I know it can be seen as one of those big barriers, but it can be really beneficial to your businesses. Just think about where it fits alongside, you know, networking, social media, podcast, print. You know, where does it fit in against all of those? And just make sure you allow enough time to do it. So if you have any questions, if you could pop them in the chat box, I am just going to very quickly get another link to share. Any questions? Do you want to, if you want to unmute yourselves and ask, or if you want to pop them in the chat box, please do.
Yeah, I know there was like the common mistake is not common mistake, but there was a warning against like humor and stuff. But is it a skill set then? If you want to consider wit, would be something to like build up. Maybe you can join a comedy club and try to get good at being witty. You know, not necessarily funny, but something like, aha, all right, I got you there. Like, yeah. I understood like the reference, whatever your reference.
I mean, there's different ways. I mean, humor translates in 1,001 different interpretations. You know, you've got memes nowadays, which are kind of being brought into kind of emails. They're even being used primarily just to drive social media posts and things like that. Humor, when it's written, there are different aspects to humor. One is kind of comparative, about how you draw a like-for-like comparison between two things, one that's outrageous and one that's kind of grounded in reality. And the other thing to do with humor as well is kind of the other way, is that if you lead someone down the garden path, and you see this in kind of TV shows, everything like that, it's when things are led down to such an expectation, and then you get taken in the complete opposite direction to what you're expecting. These are ways you kind of create humor, typically in stand-up and things like that. When it comes to writing, you are requiring the reader to interpret what you have written in the way that you wrote it. And that can be very difficult. It can be very hard to achieve that same level. You can include wit, and there's different ways of kind of doing that. Short sentence structure. You can kind of use bold, italics, underline, exclamation marks, things like this. But you really do have to be careful. So I'd say make sure it's the right thing for you to include humor. Don't fear using humor, but again, make sure that it's going to be interpreted that way. There's no guarantee people will see the joke, I think is probably what I'd kind of finish on there.
The one that I'm most interested in is relevancy. For example, if you're offering financial services, you might have a joke at Enron's expense or something. So it's really very relevant, and whoever you're targeting definitely knows like whatever you're referencing, because you're both in the same industry. You know, there's some inside jokes in the industry.
I suppose I would challenge the assumption that everyone knows about Enron.
Yeah.
That was a very that people do know about it, but that's a snapshot in time. Relevance is only as relevant as the last thing that was relevant, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
If there's been other financial kind of let's call it a rip-off, as it was, or kind of scandal since then, you know, is it better to reflect on something like that? So it's very subjective, but you know, if you can draw that comparison and it's relevant to what you're writing, or it's relevant to why you're including it, do. But if it's not linked to the purpose of your message, then I'd say, you know, it's not worth risking a misinterpretation for the sake of humor.
All right, sure, thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts? Anyone looking for a copywriter, please email Andy Mew at bestcopywriterintheuk.com. I'm joking.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Hi,
yeah, I was just having we're having like a quick question like about emails going to a spam box. I'm not sure if you've already covered it, but like when I used MailChimp, like I've noticed that like half of the recipients didn't even click the actual email. So I thought that maybe the emails go to a spam box in some, I don't know, in some settings, I guess. How do you deal with this problem, or do you use some other platforms that don't have such an issue?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've experienced this. I remember I had it when in one of my previous roles. It depends on it can depend on several things. One is kind of it actually links to your domain authority. So if Google sees you trying to send something to customers or people randomly, it may not necessarily go through to their inbox. It can come down to where it's, so in MailChimp as an example, you can say who is sending this email. So sometimes if you don't set it up to be like, if it was your business, Medina, like Medina at My Meal, if it's just going from like a generic Gmail account or something like that, sometimes that can just be picked up as spam as well. I'm not an expert on this, but typically by, you know, reading the articles on, you know, the MailChimp help forums, things like that, you tend to find the answers. But yeah, it can be a problem. But again, this is about a qualified list. Using MailChimp, though, you can also get people to opt in and kind of to subscribe. And that tends to link to people getting those emails into their inbox rather than their spam. I'm not an expert, so I'm going to leave it at that as an answer. I appreciate that doesn't really help, but there will be people out there who've experienced the same thing. There'll be articles that can help you overcome it. So I think it's just a case of reading a few different pieces and seeing kind of if there are changes you need to make or other.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I was just wondering whether it was, you know, like a problem with my email, like the content that I was like writing, or whether it was like a problem with the platform itself. But yeah, I think I'll just go to some articles. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.